with the odd little bit of drizzly rain, but most places just dry and cloudy, and that is likely to continue for the rest of the working week. If anything, just turning a shade chillier.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's just 3 weeks left to see how you could be our biggest winner this year. First, you could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This luxury vehicle comfortably sleeps 4, has its own fitted kitchen and bathroom areas, and comes complete with fitted awning and bicycle rack. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
Where there is discord, may we bring harmony. Where there is error, may we bring truth. Where there is doubt, may we bring faith. And where there is despair, may we bring hope.
Today marks 100 years since the birth of Margaret Thatcher, a remarkable woman renowned for her strength and conviction, yet far from being the heavy-handed, impulsive politician as legend paints her. Behind the iron was meticulous calculation, shrewd timing and political tact, from which we can still learn a lot. Also tonight.
Generations from now, this will be remembered as the moment that everything began to change, and change very much for the better.
The 20 living hostages held by Hamas are back in Israel tonight after more than 2 years in captivity. Hailed by Donald Trump as the historic dawn of a new Middle East, I'll be speaking to a man whose grandparents were taken hostage by Hamas about today's events and what needs to happen next. Plus,
Socialist governments traditionally do make a financial mess. They always run out of other people's money. It's quite a characteristic of them.
Rachel Reeves may impose a one-off wealth tax to plug the fictional 30 billion black hole, despite warnings that short-sighted measures will push more wealth abroad. Is socialism already running out of other people's money? And Labour's digital ID plan may allow gender self-identification instead of biological sex. Some believe this could put vulnerable people at risk when accessing public services. Is digital ID now a danger to women? State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most intellectual panel, the former Conservative MP and Minister, Sir John Redwood, and the former Labour MP and sumo wrestler, Stephen Pound. As ever, let me know your views, mailmog@gbnews.com. And you can tell me if you can work out what's going on here. I may have given it away, but now it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Sam Francis.
How dare Top stories at 8 o'clock. Donald Trump has declared the historic dawn of a new Middle East after signing his long-awaited Gaza peace deal.
It took 3,000 years to get to this point. Can you believe it? And it's going to hold up, too. It's going to hold up.
Speaking in Israel this morning before that signing, the US president said the agreement would mark a turning point for the world.
And after so many years of unceasing war and endless danger, today the skies are calm, the guns are silent, the sirens are still, and the sun rises on a holy land that is finally at peace, a land and a region that will live, God willing, in peace for all eternity.
Well, the deal brings an end to more than 2 years of war, with Israel confirming the final 20 living hostages held by Hamas are now safe home. In exchange, almost 2,000 Palestinian prisoners have been released, but the agreement's already come under strain. Hamas has handed over the coffins of just 4 dead hostages, telling mediators it doesn't know the locations of some of the other bodies. Israel's defense minister says that breaches Trump's plan, which required all hostages, alive or dead, to be returned within 72 hours. 20 world leaders, including Sir Keir Starmer, have been gathering in Sharm el-Sheikh tonight for the signing ceremony of that peace deal. Britain is expected to announce a £20 million aid package for Gaza as part of wider efforts to secure long-term peace. After the summit, the Prime Minister praised Donald Trump for helping to secure the deal, calling it a truly historic day, but did warn there's still a long way to go before lasting peace is achieved.
The challenge now is tomorrow, an implementation, and therefore, yes, today is historic, but what happens tomorrow really matters. And that's why what I've been discussing with leaders all day is what part can we play? And we, the United Kingdom in particular, I think, can play a part in monitoring the ceasefire, but also decommissioning the capability of Hamas and their weaponry, drawing on our experience in Northern Ireland. So the question today has already moved to how do we implement, how do we make sure this moves forward? And it's really important that we keep that focus. We mustn't have any missteps now.
It comes as America's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, praised Britain's incredible role in brokering the ceasefire. But not everyone's impressed. America's ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, has dismissed the UK's involvement, calling it delusional. Here, meanwhile, the leader of the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch, reacted to that news today.
Not born yesterday. I think it is actually very sad that the government is having to beg people to send tweets to say something nice about Jonathan Powell. The American ambassador to Israel has actually criticized the government, saying they are delusional for saying that they had anything to do with this peace deal. I think that that is quite tragic, the way that the UK's reputation is falling under this Labour government.
In other news tonight, the government here is denying reports that Downing Street advisers intervened in the collapse of the Chinese spy trial, calling them completely false. It says National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell was only involved in routine discussions. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch is now pressing the Prime Minister to address what she calls unanswered questions about the case. She's written Sir Keir Starmer demanding he or a senior minister appear before MPs urgently. Parliament's back, with the Conservatives calling for what they describe a clarity and honesty from Number 10. And Rachel Reeves is being warned to avoid half-baked fixes for the economy ahead of her autumn budget. A new report from the Institute for Fiscal Studies says the Chancellor could raise tens of billions through tax reform without breaking Labour's manifesto pledges. But it warns against simply hiking tax rates, calling the current system unfair and inefficient. The IFS also says restricting pension tax relief or introducing a wealth tax would risk penalising savers. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll hand you straight back to Jacob to find out just what this picture really means.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are, online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. You're going to have to wait a little to find out about that photograph, because today we mark 100 years since the birth of Baroness Thatcher, a remarkable woman renowned for decisiveness, assertiveness and strength of character. But she was also a deeply political person. She's sometimes remembered as a bull in a china shop, taking on the world purely through willpower and conviction.
The President of the Commission, Mr Delors, said at press conference the other day that he wanted the European Parliament to be the democratic body of the community, he wanted the Commission to be the executive, and he wanted the Council of Ministers to be the Senate. No, no, no.
I'm glad to say I've got that on this cup that I'm using today. No, no, no. What a wonderful statement of how we should deal with the problems she was facing at that time. But the truth is that Margaret Thatcher was a very shrewd political operator with an aptitude for knowing the right time to act. One of the first things she did as Prime Minister was to implement the Clegg Commission report, which I know sounds frightfully dull, but it gave huge pay rises to public sector workers. She didn't take them on immediately after election. Likewise, shortly after, in 1980, she gave a 20% pay rise to miners. They weren't ready for a miners' strike at that point. And this is a reminder that her approach to decision-making was never simply confrontation for the sake of it, nor was it impulsively driven by emotion. She knew the right moment to act. Timing, judgment and calculation drove her decision-making.
I was waiting with bated breath for that favourite media catchphrase, the U-turn. I have only one thing to say. U-turn if you want to. The ladies not for turning.
Now, this didn't mean that when crises occurred, such as the invasion of the Falklands and later the Brighton bombing, she wasn't able to respond instinctively and decisively. She did, but she always maintained a sense of control and discernment. Her instincts were sharp, her principles robust, but her politics were considered and cautious. She's remembered by most as an ideological warrior, but in truth she was a planner and an operator. Taxes came down, but they came down in stages.
You want to keep more of the money you earn? I'm afraid that's very selfish. The trouble with Labour is that they're just not at home with freedom. Socialists don't like ordinary people choosing, for they might not choose socialism.
Well, we could say all of that now. It's perfectly true. And in 1979, the top rate of income tax was cut from 83% to 60%. But it didn't go down to 40% until 1988. Lady Thatcher knew that if you go too far too fast, you can come off the rails. Her approach was as much about process as it was about ideology. People imagined that she was a coiled spring ready to get into action. But in reality, she was a master of patience, preparation and precision. And that skill is perhaps her greatest lesson for today's leaders. As we approach an age of political change, the Conservative Party must emulate her. It must not just be ready for change, to want change, but to manage it. That was her gift. Not just the will to act, but the wisdom to know when and how to do it. As ever, let me know your views. mailmog@gbnews.com. Because now I'm joined by my most intellectual panel, John Redwood and the famous sumo wrestler, Stephen Pound. John, I want to come to you first, because you worked with Margaret Thatcher for a long period. What was that like?
Well, it was the best boss I've ever had, and as you rightly say, she was very cautious quite a lot of the time. And you needed to work very hard to present a really good case, make sure that it all worked, and you needed to know what reactions were going to be to it before she would adopt it. And she would often take your idea and test it out on other people coming to see her about completely different subjects. They didn't know why she'd asked these questions. But we knew because she said, well, yes, John, I really trust you, but I'm going to make sure this thing hangs together. And you're exactly right about pacing it. I mean, she encouraged me to develop a lot of ideas on how you get private capital and competition into a huge nationalised estate, which was losing us a fortune and costing taxpayers huge bills. And then she wasn't ready to undertake the remedies in the first Parliament, so she didn't do very much. And it was only at the beginning of the second Parliament she said to me, I'm ready now. Would you now
So you were instrumental in the privatisation process, advising her in the background.
Yeah.
And very little happens until 1983, and then the big ones come after that.
That's when she was ready, and I think she made a good judgment because she knew that this was bitterly contested. And the unions, as often, were actually quite split on it, but they were very good at articulating hostility. But then when we said, you're going to get free shares, and you're going to be able to have pay rises because you're going to generate more cash and do things that private sector businesses can do, and you're going to have a load of extra capital. And then quite a lot of union members actually saw this made a lot of sense.
And it's the bringing together of a clear ideology. She knew where she wanted to end up, but she wasn't too worried about how she got there. Is that fair?
Well, usually. But you know, she was in power or in office as leader of the opposition as well for a long time. And her thinking evolved. Of course it did. She was a clever woman who wanted to listen to other people who knew things she didn't know. She was very good at listening to advice. She would argue very strongly with you because she wasn't going to put up with anything that wasn't thought through or sloppy. So quite a few people came in and got dispatched quite quickly. But if you were like me and you only took things to her that you had really researched and you knew your stuff, you had a good argument, and then she would often go along with it. But remember, this is a lady who in the early 70s thought the European Economic Community was a great thing and was out there campaigning for it. And by the end of the 80s, she realised that it was transforming from the common market she wanted to a proto-superstate, and she switched her views because the facts had changed.
And she had a very small team round her. You were one of a small number. There wasn't a great...
No, in the middle period when I was in Downing Street, there were 3 senior staff members. We were all full-time civil servants. I was head of policy dealing with what the government was doing. And then the private secretary head did all the organisation of diary and interaction with departments in the civil service. And then Bernard Ingham was the spokesman. And he ran the communications and media side. So it was just 3 of us. So why it worked so well, partly because she was such a great boss, but also partly because there were only 3 of us. So we had a lot of exposure to her, and we knew exactly what she wanted, so we could give very clear instructions around Whitehall.
And she had a very good relationship with her immediate staff, but a very testy relationship with some of her cabinet ministers. What made that difference? Was it that they weren't bright enough to keep up with her, or was it that actually they didn't want to do what she was proposing?
Well, I tried to help her on that, so I tried to get her to have more one-to-one private meetings with the key reports and to use those meetings by briefing both sides so that you could iron out any complications, get them working together. But I think it was that she was the first woman Prime Minister. They were a different generation to us, obviously, and they were used to women not being in those senior leadership positions. They didn't know really how to relate to her. So in one sense, they were too courteous. And she wanted a good argument. She wanted the men to stand up to her. And in another sense, they could be a bit misogynist or dismissive. Oh, well, she's a woman and we're just going to do what we want to do. So she had to get control and get them to take her seriously. And so they could be frustrating.
Stephen, Labour in the 1980s loathed Margaret Thatcher. People talk about politics being divisive now, but it was much more divisive then, wasn't it? What was it about her that so antagonised the left? Was it, as John was saying, so actually she gave opportunities to your voters?
Well, perhaps you'd allow me to come back at you on that. I have to say that the question that springs to mind when I listen to the sort of the eulogies that you're giving there is, if she was so flipping wonderful, why on earth did she get thrown under the bus by her own Conservative MPs?
Well, they got jealous and fed up with her being in power.
So you're saying she stayed on for too long? So she overstayed her welcome. Is that, look, let me say, I'm a gentle soul. I'm not a great fan for wrestling, but I think certain things I'd give her credit for. I think during the Falklands, her leadership was exemplary. I think that refusing to allow the National Lottery and refusing to allow the privatisation of the Royal Mail, excellent idea. However, if you told me back in the 1980s that our water, our rivers, our streams, our power, our electricity, our gas, our airports would all be owned by French, German, Indian, Australian hedge funds, I would have thought this country could have possibly put up.
And she and I would agree with you, which is why we put golden shares in to block foreigners, and it was your Labour government that stripped the golden shares out.
Believe you me, those privatisations took place in the 1980s. The last one of transport and rail took place in 1996, long before Labour came into power. Look, I think you say that she was a
but you took out the safeguards we put in.
By then. Listen, and a couple of things that particularly antagonised many people, I would say, on the left. Firstly, we had 187,000 miners in 1984. That's about 500,000 miners' families. Now, what she didn't do is actually have any thought for the transition from employment into unemployment. So today, in South Wales, in the North West, in South Yorkshire, you've got pools of desperation still a residue. And the other thing, which is unforgivable, she introduced council house sales, which is marvellous if you had a council house, but she didn't allow the councils to spend that money on building new housing, as a result of which we hollowed out...
Yes, she did, unless they had a big debt which they had to pay off.
John, the capital receipts were not allowed. So the consequence of that is, you go to most of the housing estates now, they've now been sold by the people who bought them, and then now you've got HMOs and multiple occupation. It was disastrous.
It was a nationalised coal board that ran down more pits and closed more pits under Labour than under Margaret Thatcher.
There were 174 pits in 1984. 174.
Yeah, a lot closed under the Tories as well. But there were many more that closed under the Labour government before her.
Not true.
And I don't...
Margaret Thatcher.
You know, I can look you in the eyes on this because, for example, when I was a government minister, the coal board was planning to close one of the bigger collieries in Wales, Tower Colliery. And I got hold of the trade unions and agreed an employee buyout so the miners could have their own pit. And those miners proved that the old nationalised industry coal board was useless because they ran that pit profitably for 12 years after the coal board said they couldn't make it work.
Well, I'm sorry, I understand. I know the thing about the big pit, and the big pit wasn't sustainable. If you remember, the seams were running out. They only had 2 seams operating, 2 deep coal, and the anthracite aspect had long gone by then.
All right.
So,
well, thank you very much. It's amazing that Margaret Thatcher stopped being Prime Minister in 1990 and she still creates these enormous passions. You know which side I'm on. Thank you very much to my panel. In a moment.
The long and painful nightmare is finally over.
The 20 living hostages held by Hamas are back in Israel tonight after more than 2 years in captivity. I will be speaking to a man whose grandparents were taken hostage by Hamas about today's events and what needs to happen next.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
While the organisers work, it is lunchtime for the guinea pigs. Let me give Helen you this.
Thank you. There we go. This is Ziggy, and she's one of our 7 rescue piggies that we brought along with us today.
And Helen, you're here with this amazing model village where the guinea pigs are enjoying. Guinea pigs don't really need as much space as this, though, but it is nice.
It is lovely. I mean, you know, who wouldn't want your own pub and your own nail bar? But on a serious note, the reason we've built such a big enclosure here today is just to provide that message that bigger is always better. Guinea pigs love exploring, they love foraging, you know, it's really good for their mental well-being. So the bigger space you can provide them, the better. And I think ours are having a really nice time today.
Ziggy is getting through that lettuce leaf. I'll leave you to enjoy that. Thank you, Helen, for joining us. Come with me this way as the organisers are continuing to get the event underway here. You can hear the drilling going on because we've got dancing dogs here because the show here is all about how music is impacting your pets. Trip Hazard is a Trip Hazard here, and Lucy, who looks after Trip Hazard, you've been on Britain's Got Talent, came 5th on that. Also, European UK dog dancing champions.
Right, yeah.
How'd you get into this?
To be honest, we used to watch it at Crufts when I was younger, and I wasn't allowed a dog of my own, and I thought it was the most magical thing I'd ever seen, the bond between the dog and owner, and I just knew that when I got my first dog, I really wanted to give it a go.
And, I mean, if anyone fancies doing this at home, what's your advice?
Oh, find what your dog really, really loves, their favourite treats, their favourite toy, and definitely use that to teach them and reward them for all the tricks.
Well, have you got a treat for me to perhaps test something out now? Rummaging around for a treat. Right, we've been practising this all morning. Wish me luck. Volt, 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 volt. Hey, there we go. Oh, it was better earlier, but that is something I've learned this morning.
The People's Channel.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we were talking about the great lady, Margaret Thatcher's 100th birthday, and the male Moggs have come down from heaven, I think, today. Robert says Margaret Thatcher was a strong, formidable woman who led the nation towards strength through the application of conservative principles. She lived above a shop in her childhood. She's a fantastic example of levelling up. But the left are so blinkered by bias, they would never acknowledge her genius. And Margaret says, how delightful to have a message from a Margaret in honour of another Margaret. Margaret Thatcher was determined to make our country great, and that is exactly what she did. A fantastic Prime Minister. The country needs another Margaret Thatcher right now. We are in real trouble. Hear, hear. Well, wonderful news. The last 20 living hostages held by Hamas since the 7th of October 2023 have been returned back to Israel tonight, freed after more than 2 years in captivity. But the fate of up to 28 others believed dead remains unknown. Israel has released nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners in exchange. Donald Trump was applauded in the Israeli parliament as he hailed the historic dawn of a new Middle East. Well, I'm joined now by Daniel Lifshitz, whose grandparents were taken hostage on the 7th of October. Daniel, first of all, thank you so much for joining me. I understand your grandmother was released, but sadly your grandfather died as a hostage. How is your grandmother now, having been released?
Thank you for welcoming me, and good evening. I think that... do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, yes. I was just asking how your grandmother is.
Yeah. So I said thank you very much and good evening. Thank you for welcoming me. My grandma today has been finally released from captivity, I can say, because there is no living hostage behind. We are very worried for the deceased hostages, but when I met my grandma today, I saw different color on her face, I saw different color on her eyes, and I saw that finally she's not going to see a poster of a hostage tomorrow, and it will take her directly back to the tunnel. So the release today of the 20 last living hostages from Gaza is a very special one, as when they will be released, they will not look back and feeling that they left someone behind. And for all the living hostages that have been released by this time, today is the day that they are finally being released and can start the healing process.
And I know all my viewers would want me to send via you to your grandmother our very best wishes and condolences, particularly to her, for the cruel death of your grandfather. This gives you and your family such a personal involvement in what is happening now. What does your family hope for? And how can you heal when such terrible tragedy has afflicted you and your family?
So today was the release of 4 members of our community. Kibbutz Nir Oz is a very, very close community. We are very close to each other. And the release, for me personally, of David and Ariel Cunha, the 2 brothers, those people I know from the age of 0, they are as little brothers for me. So it's the first day that we can start to think, how can we really heal from this trauma? We're Israelis. We know how to deal with difficult issues and wars, but and still looking for hope. And maybe, for us, a future path for global peace in the region, something that we will really see more security for the people of Israel. We want to see a change, a global change in the Middle East, a global change in Israel and with the relationships with the Palestinians. And I think with all of those things, we can look forward. And in the meantime, we need to work on ourselves. We need to work on the trauma we've been faced. We need to treat very well. This country has more than 100,000 people that have been affected by trauma, I think, since October 7. And having a family member as a hostage is an endless roller coaster. And really, as you mentioned, it's an impossible situation. But, they've been released, and my grandfather is back for a proper burial. And now we have to fight for the last 24 deceased hostages from a day of a lot of joy, I'm happily exhausted. Now, just few hundred meters from me, the bodies are going to come to the autopsy and to make sure with the DNA test that they are the bodies. Mm-hmm. And we have another 24 families that have to get a closure before continuing.
And how do you think trust can be rebuilt or built between the two communities to make peace a lasting peace? What are the steps that will need to be taken? And how will the communities that have been affected come together in some way?
For our community of Kibbutz Nir Oz, part of the people will not come back to the kibbutz and will move to another place which is reasonable. And a big part of the community will come back. My mom that lived in the kibbutz will come back. Not sure yet about my grandmother because it's a different process. My mom didn't suffer the time in Nir Oz on October 7. And in terms of peace, we are in the process. That was the first step. Now we have to make sure everyone being released. Then we need to make sure that the Palestinians are going to choose differently. They have to choose, instead of terror, to choose peace. That is a very significant role. I think they have not a very long window of opportunity, but now in this narrow window of opportunity, we need to hear the voices that are looking for peace. We need to make sure that President Trump's framework, and I think the guy that's been there for making the added value to close all that was Jared Kushner, together with Ambassador Witkoff. So they have to work very hard now with the Arab leaders in Sharm el-Sheikh and after the summit about Gaza to see that Hamas will completely demilitarize. I've heard today that President Trump said no rebuilding of Gaza until Hamas demilitarizes. That's a very good point to continue and make sure there will be no weapons in Gaza. And after that, I think if the Palestinians will see that the Abraham Accord are enlarging to another countries, in some way they will have to follow it, but they have to choose a leadership that will choose peace over terror. I think that's the most important thing. But maybe we need some decade of education for that as well.
All right. Well, Daniel, we all pray for the success of peace. And thank you so much for joining me this evening. I'll be coming back shortly. Thank you.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
If you're off to the central Mediterranean in the next few days, then do prepare for some heavy showers and potentially some thunderstorms, which could bring some flooding in places. Relatively fine for the next few days, though, for Canary Islands, although there will be some rain from Madeira by the middle part of the week. Mostly dry across Siberia, but the Balearic Islands, Sardinia, parts of Corsica and Sicily will see some heavy showers and thunderstorms. And whilst there'll be 1 or 2 showers for the Eastern Med as well, most places here dry and sunny, but an increasing chance of showers later in the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather outlook from the Met Office here on GB News. Good evening to you. It's been a largely dry day. Some places started with a bit of drizzle, but the largely dry weather will continue for the next few days, as will the fairly cloudy skies, because this chunky area of high pressure is sitting right over us, and it means the weather's not really shifting too far. There's quite a lot of cloud trapped under that area of high pressure. Thick enough for some drizzle here and there to continue, particularly over the Midlands, parts of eastern England, but otherwise it's a dry night. West Wales, parts of Scotland, especially again in the west, should keep some clear skies. And where skies do stay clear for longest, well, temperatures will dip well down into single figures. And as well as that, could be some mist and fog around, forming where we've got those clear skies, at least initially, through parts of Scotland. Still the cloud thick enough for some drizzly showers over Lincolnshire, down across East Anglia and in towards Kent. As I said, further west, some breaks in the clouds, some sunny spells for West Wales. And a bit like today, much of Scotland should see some sunshine during Tuesday. Could be a bit foggy to start with, and parts of the northeast, particularly close to the coast, may stay a little grey throughout. It may take a while for the mist and fog to clear, but it should be disappearing through the morning to reveal some sunny spells through central, western Scotland. Wales and southwest England, some breaks in the cloud likely here, but it's going to stay fairly grey, I suspect, over the Midlands and much of eastern England, and still at times just a bit of drizzle falling out of that thick cloud. Temperature-wise, well, about average for the time of year, maybe only 11 or 12 across parts of Scotland, but some sunshine does make a big difference to the feel of the day. Spot the difference for Wednesday. There's not a lot of it, maybe a few more showers coming in across the Northern Isles, still a bit of a breeze across Kent and Norfolk and Suffolk with the odd little bit of drizzly rain, but most places just dry and cloudy, and that is likely to continue for the rest of the working week. If anything, just turning a shade chillier.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Rachel Reeves imposed a windfall tax on Britain's wealthiest household to tackle the mysterious £30 billion hole, or will she do so? The Institute for Fiscal Studies says a one-off levy could be economically efficient, but warned against short-sighted measures that risk driving wealth abroad. But would a wealth tax just disincentivise wealth creation further? Let's go to my panel. And then, Stephen, come on. You can't have more tax.
Well, hang on a second. Rachel Reeves, nobody in the Labour Party, nobody in the Labour government, no Labour advisor, not even a lowly hack like me, none of us are suggesting this. This is the Institute for Fiscal Studies. Have said it's a good, which is nothing to do with the Labour Party. So let's wait and see what happens.
Yeah, but Treasury briefings were hinting that this was something they're open to.
Jacob, hinting. I'm sorry. You know.
But Stephen, you know how this works. We all know how this works. That an idea is floated. Officials, under the orders of the government, give a nod and a wink to journalists who are very professional. This may be kite flying, but it is government kite flying.
I'm sorry, off-the-record briefings are never briefings and they're never off the record. You know.
Right. John, I mean, I think the journalists are too responsible to just make this up. It's more than that. But it would be disastrous economically, wouldn't it? Take even more money out of the economy?
Well, of course it would be, but the whole set of briefings, week after week, and it'll probably go on all the way to the budget, are about different types of tax solutions to the 30 billion. This is probably one of the worst answers, because you can't do it with a one-off. They want to spend 30 billion every year, not just for 1 year. So the black hole continues in following years if you do this wealth tax. And of course it will drive more people away. They're all queuing up to leave already because of what she did in the last budget. And this one-off hit, nobody will believe it will be a one-off hit. They'll think there'll be another hit the following year. And once they've introduced it, then they'll start creeping down the threshold, so that then people who aren't very rich are going to be paying it as well. And some of the worst ideas that they're giving ground to is the idea that someone who's living in an area of quite high house prices, who doesn't have very much income, could suddenly face a super tax on the council tax. I mean, that's a dreadfully bad idea as well. They're skirting round a wealth tax. And the few countries that have tried them have discovered they create lots of problems, but also no country has tried one who's already got a whole set of wealth taxes in place with the stamp duties and the council taxes and all the rest of it.
Because actually on stamp duty and council tax, we are very heavily taxed on property in this country already.
Well, we're taxed on property. We should be taxed on land, if there's any sense at all. It should be land, not property. But look, everybody knows that we actually need money to service our debt at the present time. You look at the percentage of GDP which simply goes on servicing debt.
OK, we've got to cut expenditure.
Exactly so. Now, can we agree on that?
Yes,
can we
agree on that.
Can we
but Rachel Reeves doesn't.
Yeah. Well, no, agree on two things. Firstly, additional taxation doesn't help. Although I've never quite understood how Finland and Sweden and Germany, in places which have much, much higher marginal rates of taxation than we do, are much more economically active than we are, and actually happier in many cases. I don't understand. Maybe it's because we're different in this country. I don't.
Well, they don't have the whole range of taxes we've got, and Rachel Reeves decided to put a big tax on jobs at a time when we actually needed more jobs, not fewer, and a big tax on business so that then they don't invest. And of course, we've got the worst kind of tax of all, very high energy prices, higher than anybody else. So we're deindustrialising at a pace. Labour should be much more worried about loss of all this industry.
However, I think Stephen raises a really interesting question. That it seems to me that every country has its maximum tax as a percentage of GDP level, which, however you slice the cake, you don't get above. And ours seems to be about where we are now. And therefore, you put up taxes, you don't get any more.
Well, I think we're slightly above where we can
sustainably be.
Because we've had 16,000 millionaires leaving already.
And therefore, you've got...
We mentioned earlier on, we actually mentioned Dennis Healey. No, we didn't mention Dennis Healey. We mentioned 1979, where we had 83%.
Which didn't get more as a percentage of GDP in tax than we're currently getting.
And it didn't drive people abroad.
We got a lot less.
It did drive people abroad. I remember in 1979 that people said the Bee Gees were going to come back to Britain if tax rates went down.
But hang on a second.
We had something called the brain drain, Steve.
The brain drain.
Real.
Enoch Powell talked about the brain drain in 1963, but the Bee Gees were born in the Isle of Man, then they went to Melbourne, Australia. And so, I mean, I think they're pretty peripatetic anyway. But I remember I actually had a piece in the Evening Standard in 1979 about Twiggy, Leslie Hornby, as she was, who I admired greatly, talking about leaving. And I said, if that's the case, people should have a little island so the only things that get spent on that are what they... if you're part of the state, if you're part of enjoying the benefits of living in this country, you've got to pay your membership.
But these high taxes are self-defeating. I mean, in 78, the top 1% of income taxpayers paid just 11% of the income tax. They now pay 30%.
We're now going to have to move on because Labour's digital ID plan is being criticised for paving the way to allow gender self-identification. Women's rights groups fear digital ID could let people declare a preferred gender instead of biological sex, potentially putting vulnerable people at risk in public services. Professor Alice Sullivan, who reviewed government data on sex and gender, says recording biological sex is essential, or sex should not be recorded at all. Where moments ago, the Science Secretary, Liz Kendall, defended digital ID in the House of Commons.
Bringing in a new digital ID is about far more than replacing numerous bits of paper just to prove who you are. It's about changing the way the state interacts with its citizens. Second reason for introducing digital ID is to offer greater security and actually greater control over your own data.
Is digital ID now dangerous to women? It was wonderful listening to Liz, actually, because she clearly didn't believe what she was saying. But never mind. I'm joined now by the Chief Executive of Sex Matters, Mayor Forstadter. Thank you so much for joining me. I think digital ID is a pretty rotten idea anyway. But if people can self-identify as whatever they feel like, it becomes nonsensical, particularly in light of the Supreme Court judgment, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it becomes nonsensical in two ways. One is when you need to prove your sex or somebody needs to know your sex. If the government identity that says M or F doesn't mean anything, then you can't trust it. You can't trust it for healthcare. You can't trust it for who's allowed into a gym changing room or who can play in women's sports. But also, if people can change their identity from male to female and disappear from their old life just by signing a letter, they don't have to do anything, and then do it again. They could go back to being male with a different name, different identity, and completely break the chain between who they were and who they're presenting themselves to be. So the digital identity, if it's going to work at all, it has to do one thing, which is allow people to prove who they are and facts about themselves. And the government is just sleepwalking into something like the Post Office Horizon scandal with what they're doing with digital identity by ignoring that sex cannot change.
Well, in a way, for those of us who oppose digital ID, it makes the whole thing absurd, because if you can change your ID whenever you feel like it, then it doesn't serve any useful purpose at all. You can't prove who you are, you can't prove your right to access public services, you can't even prove which loo you should go into. I mean, it does become a nonsensical but very expensive policy.
Yes, and the problem is it's building on top of government data which is already corrupted. So it's going to depend on data that's held by the Passport Office, the Driving Licence Authority and the NHS, for example, which are seen as being authoritative sources. But all of those public bodies have been allowing people to change their sex as recorded for the past 30 years. We don't know how many people have done it. According to the census, it could be up to 100,000 people, and they've not kept any records.
So I've just renewed my passport, actually. So could I have said that I was a girl, just on the off chance that that might be useful to me? Is that really the case?
You could have written to the if you happen to be a cross-dresser, and I don't know what you do at the weekend. If you happen to be a cross-dresser and you decided that now you wanted to live as your true self forevermore, somebody like Eddie Izzard, who for years and years said, these are women's clothes. These are not women's clothes. They're my clothes. Now Eddie Izzard would like to be called Susie. If you were to do something like that and write to the Passport Office and say, I've been a cross-dresser for many years and now I'd like to live in a female identity, they would give you a female passport.
No, they wouldn't.
All right. Well, that's absolutely extraordinary. No. And I think it makes the whole case for digital ID absurd. Thank you very much, Mayor. And to my panel earlier, in a moment. Donald Trump's threat of 100% tariffs on China has led to a $400 billion cryptocurrency crash, with Bitcoin sinking 15% and markets worldwide preparing for more chaos. And can you tell what's going on here? Thank you very much.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good
of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Donald Trump's threat of 100% tariffs on China has led to one of the biggest cryptocurrency crashes in its relatively short history, erasing around $400 billion in under 24 hours. Bitcoin fell by more than 15%, while traders lost record amounts. The Bank of England, you'll be reassured by this, is monitoring this closely as markets brace for more losses, and experts warn the chaos could ripple across global finance in the coming days. Well, let's go to my panellists, John Redwood and Stephen Pound. John, the interesting thing about this is, where is the value in cryptocurrency? What is its real intrinsic value, if anything?
Well, it's not proper money because you can't use it to go and buy things in a shop. And it's not a store of value because its price swings up and down, not necessarily in that order. And I think what we've seen in the last few days is somebody placed a really big, successful bet against cryptocurrency and made a lot of money by selling it short. And then they covered, and it actually bounced when they covered their position. And it just reminds us that this is a very volatile creation, which you can make a lot of money in if you're a good gambler. You can lose a lot of money in if you're a bad investor.
But is it to some extent a reaction to quantitative easing and a feeling that fiat currencies aren't properly underpinned, and therefore people are looking for something else?
Yes, I mean, they hope it's the new gold, or they think it's something that is separate from the state because the state doesn't have the same control over it. But then the danger is that bad actors think it's very attractive, and so then honest, good actors don't necessarily want to be so associated.
But isn't that the point about cryptocurrency? Is that it's unregulated, it's unoverseen, and so it is the currency of choice for drug dealers, gangsters and international mobsters. It's a choice of that. But what I can't understand about this is that I think there's 7 or 8 different cryptocurrencies at the moment, including Donald Trump's got his own personal one. So if this money has lost 50 billion. Where was the 50 billion that has been lost? I simply don't understand it. Now, maybe that's my generation or not, but it seems to be a complete smoke and mirrors.
It's all electronic money, and it has fluctuating values, but all electronic money has fluctuating value.
Yeah, but I appreciate that, but if it's fallen down that much, presumably it went up by 50 billion at some stage.
What benefit? By a lot more than that.
Well, what benefit did the world get from that?
But it's like the 36 billion that your friend Gordon Brown lost on selling the gold off cheap. That 60 billion is 36 billion is a profit made by other people.
Hang on a second. Let's not go back too far. Gordon Brown didn't lose that money. That money was spent on actually building homes, improving the infrastructure of this country. It was a damn good deal for this country.
But he didn't have to sell the gold. He could have sold paper currencies and wouldn't have lost nearly so much in terms of money.
The money wasn't taken off the Bank of England anyway. It was invested in euros, so it was kept.
It wasn't invested in euros.
It was kept as reserves.
It was building homes for the future. The BHF scheme.
Kept as reserves. But it is interesting that people have gone to crypto because they're frightened of fiat currencies, which always end up badly. And that's why gold is doing so well.
But you know, if you're in a bank, I'm selling my house at the moment, and I'm buying another house, and I have to fill in all these forms, which is all to do with money laundering. And so, because I'm a legitimate, decent person, and I couldn't get away with it even if I wanted to. I'm doing it legally and properly. And I said, the thing about cryptocurrencies, if you did that with crypto, you wouldn't have to do any of that. You could be money laundering till the cows come home. So I think that's the attraction, and it's dangerous and it's dodgy, but I don't know how we could stop it.
But, I mean, there are also so-called safe versions where they link it to something like the dollar. But then why not just use the dollar?
Why not just use the dollar?
Well, it's like the Swiss currency was actually pegged against the Deutschmark. You can do that. You can have a crawling peg as back in the old days. But it seems to me that this is completely unregulated. And if we had the South Sea bubble and do you remember the Dutch black tulip scandal? Things get up. And all I know about bubbles is that they burst.
Well, there is a double bubble on crypto because there are these funds that invest in crypto which trade at a premium to the underlying value of the crypto. And that's just crazy because they're basically money market funds at a premium. And that makes absolutely no sense.
Yes, I mean, there's always much more danger if you've got gearing in something, and some of these have implied gearing or they're bought on borrowed money, and that adds to the risk considerably. But I mean, it's just a market, and some people like it for the reasons that Jacob has set out perfectly clearly. But it's not yet a serious asset class that people put into their pension funds.
And gold is now $4,000 an ounce.
Gold shines forth, supreme of lordly wealth. Anyway, now what you've all been waiting for on tenterhooks since the beginning of the programme with that beautiful picture I showed you. Sumo wrestling is coming to the Royal Albert Hall, but attendees are being warned not to sit too close in case they get squashed by the wrestlers. The tournament will also involve throwing salt and sand, and the crowd is being warned about that as well. As well as our verbal sparring on the programme, Stephen Pound and I have been known to engage in some other forms of combat. Yes, it's Stephen on the right and me on the left, not necessarily politically. Perhaps we should have issued a safety warning to poor old John Redwood.
Well, the only connection I've ever had with sumo wrestling is that I had all my money in the sumo bank, but it went belly up. However, I then put it all in the First Bank of Origami. But that folded.
Oh, no, it gets worse and worse.
So I'm here all week, folks.
I would love to go and watch sumo wrestling. I think it will clash with GB News, unfortunately. But it's in one of the James Bond films, and it always seems so exciting and, in a way, symbolic.
Well, after you, but I don't think it's my kind of thing at all, I'm afraid. I'm a real old bore. I don't think I want to go to it.
But it's a mix. It's a religious ceremony. They are enormous. I once read the quantities of food they eat, and it is phenomenal. Tons and tons of food.
They bless the ring beforehand, and the winners are Samoa. It's one of those great quiz questions. What was the sport in which Abraham Lincoln was undefeated in 49 bouts? And that was Greco-Roman wrestling. He's very, very keen on it, and of course American universities go for it. But this business here in Japan, it is theological. It's almost a religion. And of course it's great problems in Tokyo because the winners now all tend to be from Fiji or Samoa.
Do they? So they're not Japanese?
Well, there may be one or two, but the last four, I forget the word, somebody will remind me in a minute, the person who actually is the supreme talker.
Do you think we should let our viewers into a secret, because we don't want to get in trouble with Ofcom, that picture was AI generated? It's not a real picture.
Wow!
John's so disappointed. That is an AI generated.
This is a new low, isn't it?
I know. We thought, however, it might prove entertaining for you. Anyway, that's all from me. Up next, it's a much better sumo wrestler. He even does it in Somerset, the one and only Patrick Christie's. Patrick, how's your Somerset sumo wrestling going?
Oh, I'm just limbering up, Jacob. I'm just limbering up. Brilliant stuff. Right, look, I've got loads on tonight. There's this East London mosque that banned all women and girls over the age of 12 from taking part in a jog. What is it, lads, about 12-year-old girls that would put you off your jog, I wonder? So we're talking about that. Of course, as well, Sir Keir Starmer found himself utterly humiliated by President Trump today at the old Gaza ceasefire signing. I've got a hilarious clip for you. It's just absolutely magnificent, this thing. So we're playing that for you. Also, I remember Starmer telling us that we were going to be able to use e-gates. I don't know about that. Well, it turns out now we've got the opposite. Fingerprints, eye scans, everything. Can he even lie straight in bed, this guy? That's next.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Yes, it's time for your latest weather outlook from the Met Office here on GB News. Good evening to you. It's been a largely dry day. Some places started with a bit of drizzle, but the largely dry weather will continue for the next few days, as will the fairly cloudy skies, because this chunky area of high pressure is sitting right over us, and it means the weather's not really shifting too far. There's quite a lot of cloud trapped under that area of high pressure. Thick enough for some drizzle here and there to continue, particularly over the